when there's so much longing for the times that's unspent in the past, I think that longing kind of haunts.
Hi, my name's Lawrence Joss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. Today, we're going to have part two of our conversation with Ceyhun, who is calling in out of Turkey. And the first part of the conversation was fascinating. We're talking about what it's like to live in a family system where the parents don't get divorced, where they live in the same household, but parental alienation or estrangement is still present, and what that looks like as Jehun, who's now 35, is a young adult coming into adulthood, and how he's working with all these different thoughts and ideas and what's happening in his body. And it's a really deep dive into some fantastic stuff. And please remember to like, share, and leave a review for us. And also, there's a link in the show notes for the podcast crew where you can actually contribute, ask questions, make suggestions for the show. And I'd also like to ask you out there is to let us know, like, do you like the shows being about 30 to 40 minutes? And in part one and part two, would you prefer the shows to just be 1 hour long? And you can send us an email at familydisappeared@gmail.com and let us know that, or podcast crew, let us know that through there. And finally, we want to have as many people represented on the show as possible. We want to have as much diversity, inclusion, and equity. And we want to have people, from marginalized community, from the LGBTQ community, from the BIPOC community. Like, we want anyone that's looking for a platform to be part of this conversation to express their opinions. And I want to share this platform with you. So please contact me. Let me know if you have interest in doing that. And again, familydisappeared@gmail.com. And now let's jump into the show. It took me a long time to realize that part of my nervous system and functionality had been colonized by my parents. And it's an interesting topic, and we're going to have a show on this in the future. But basically, just my mom using my nervous system to regulate herself, right? Because she had trauma, and she hasn't necessarily done the work to regulate herself. So she uses something outside of herself. Instead of a therapist, she uses a child. So you see this a lot in parental alienation, where there's trauma, generational trauma, secondary trauma, whatever it is, and someone else is using a third party to regulate their nervous system instead of taking care of themselves and getting professional help. So they're blowing their trauma through someone else, like the children, and then the children become sort of like a parent in some sort of ways, or just something to regulate the family member's nervous system. It didn't ever get to the dysfunctionality where the system fell apart, but it did influence my decisions as an adult and as I went out into the world. So we're really going to continue that conversation and to dig into some more of the nuances, and let's find out what happens next. Let's jump in. Yeah, so I guess my question is for you is, like, it sounds like you're trying to convince your father of what your mother has done to you, and you want him to acknowledge that. I'm curious why that feels really important to you.
I think maybe before I was just conditioned to see masculinity in general maybe um, as the villain or as the enmity, this toxic masculinity and authoritarian masculine. Um, I think I want to activate the more and more the masculine traits in me, spending more time with my father. I want to learn masculinity from him, and maybe there is a, I don't know, there is a longing, strong longing for a father figure that I want to make up from my past. So instead, when my father is not there, I have my, fortunately, uncles from my father's side. So I think it's very crucial, Lawrence, when this alienation is happening, that one has a support system from 12 steps, but also from the parents, relatives, that hears and sees you. So in a way, this in this dysfunctional parents, there is this don't trust, don't feel, don't talk rule. For many years, I'm exposing that. I'm getting out of it. And so it's so nice that I have some support system, my uncles from my father's side, from my mother, mostly from my father's side, yeah, but also from my mother's side, there is a place that I can go and stay.
Yeah, I'm loving that you have the support from your uncles, and that sounds like it's really dear and important to you. But I'm still there's this thing that I'm a little confused about. Like you want your dad to hear about your perception and your lived experiences with your mother, and it feels like it's important to you. And I'm curious, why is it important for your dad to have that part of a shared reality with you, to agree or even to acknowledge that happened?
Well, I think maybe most importantly, I don't want to feel lonely anymore in this. Well, why do I want my father to see me and understand, acknowledge what's happening? Because I feel like I feel as if torn between this gender wars, this long stricken, long stretch conflict between them, as if I've been um, kind of self destroying in this family annihilation. And I think I want everybody to see what's happening and take some action, either separate houses as a first step or divorce. I think my parents, all their life, they wanted to hold on to this perfect image. So unless that perfect image is broken, which could be divorce, they may not take accountability and responsibility of their shortcomings and imperfections because they play like universal gods. For children, parental figures are the first gods, but it needs to be local gods that needs to be overcome. But whereas in my parents, I think they played like universal gods, and if they divorce, that view may shatter. So they may start taking some responsibility and feel like, all right, then we need to acknowledge we made some mistakes and we need to focus on our children's well-being too. It's not only about us, it's also our children here.
So, in them acknowledging what's going on in the family system, I'm hearing that it would sound really healing for you for them to actually acknowledge that there was any kind of dysfunction going on in the family system. Because right now, it's crazy making and there's really distorted mirroring that's coming back at you that's making you feel like the crazy one. Yes.
Yes, definitely. It's as if when my mother calls me, when I don't respond and she keeps pushing, getting attention from me, and as if I have to feel like maybe I'm a bad son for not returning to my mother's call, but I just want her to actually acknowledge the boundaries, especially pretending nothing happened in between. I would like her first to write, see that I felt hurt, what happened, but she pretends as if nothing happened in between. So she wants to call me to the past where she was just the mother, the perfect mother she thought she was.
Totally. And are you okay if I dig a little bit more into the question with your father? Does that feel safe and appropriate for you? As long as you're comfortable, or I can get back to some of the really specific questions, and I'm fine doing that too. I'm just curious, and again, if this doesn't land in a great way, or you don't want to answer that, that's great too. Is this idea of getting your father to see what your mother has done? Doesn't that feel like it's still you putting your mother's stuff and all this enmeshment and colonization of your body and mind before your relationship with your father, because she's still taking up all the space even though she's not there, and you're wanting your father to hear the stuff instead of just being with your father and not getting all her stuff again. Like it's like keeps morphing into a different shape and size, and now it's the story your dad needs to hear, and it still keeps you separate from your father.
I think what I'm aiming with that intention, Lawrence, is I'm asking for my father's protection and intervention with reason, not like intervention with like conflicts, or I want father's name in form of reason. Um, my mother was protecting me, but I didn't know it had so many conditions attached to it. And now I want a reasonable figure to intervene and promote the reason and promote the truth. I want truth by my side, and I'm trying to, kind of mobilize some support, some more support on this case so that the truth can reveal itself and heal everybody actually in this.
Yeah, no, it sounds really challenging. And I think it's a common theme. Like I know for me, I wanted people on my side. I wanted people to understand my story. I wanted people like the language and that you use to mobilize the truth. And I kept trying to get different parties to do that, and it was exhausting. It was really, really, really tiring, and I landed up for myself finding that happened in my own interpersonal recovery, and I couldn't get that from my family, and I don't think I still do in many ways, you know. So it's a really interesting intersection, and again a wonderful nuance in the topic, and I want to like move this conversation a tiny bit to the right because I think this is really important. And I don't know if we've discussed it on the show before. You're 35 years old, you're out in the world, you have partners, you're dating. Like, how does this manifest in those relationships, and do you look for similar characteristics like from your mother in your partners?
Actually, Lawrence, for the last few years, I've been living um, a reclusive monk's life, doing just the inner recovery, taking online psychoanalysis 3, 4 times a week, watching the movies only that's aligned with my developmental path, the questions that I'm stuck at, I'm looking answers for, watching YouTube videos on psychology, on personality disorders, narcissism, dysfunctional parenting, family systems, this drama triangle, trying to learn as much as I can to overcome this crazy making situation. So I've been abstaining from dating, from all that, because I didn't want to um, get into the same pattern, same cycle of abusive, toxic relationships as I learned and modeled from my parents. Because in my relationships, I'm aware now of what's happened in the past that almost led to my demise, which was I either looked for partners um, that that I would abandon, as I felt abandoned by my parents, even though they were all giving and generous. I probably wanted to abandon them, reenacting what was happening to me, to mirror what was happening to me. I was trying to understand unconsciously. And I fell in love with the woman who would abuse me instead, rather than um, love, because that was also my truth, right? So in a way, went out to look for people like me who was all given but being abused and abandoning them because replaying my self-betrayal, self-abandoning. And also I was looking for women like my parents who were abusing me, abandoning me. I was trying to prove my worth, prove my intelligence, and through which I was aiming to transform them in the faith, with the hope that that way I can transform my parents, maybe. And doing all these, I was trying to find a cure, a potion, a root remedy to the root cause, and rescue parents, revive the dead. This way, maybe the marriage will function and start, so they'll start seeing their children. I think this was all happening in the background, in the unconscious, right? I wasn't aware of why was I doing what.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that there was kind of like a couple different things going on in your relationships. You were either with people that really loved you, and you would use the abandonment and the pulling away of the love to kind of like control the relationship, or you were in a relationship with people that needed you to regulate the nervous system and take care of you. And both of those things were happening in your home, and you were raised with that. So you went out and reenacted those relationships in both sides of that spectrum, which are basically the exact same spectrum.
Exactly. Yes. And then I had one, two a healthy romance, or healthy friends that showed me interest romantically, and I could not reciprocate because I find it boring or too healthy. It's like I was addicted to a roller coaster that doesn't stop. So that was frightening because it just can't stop.
I love that. Like when something healthy comes along, it's like, whoa, yeah, that's too much for me. I need that real high. I need that real low, that in between stuff. Nah, I don't want any of that. And I think that's a really important part of recovery, whether it's 12 step or you're doing your own interpersonal work or whatever, is instead of being in these really highs and really lows, we find this like medium way, like the middle path where we just have smaller fluctuations and once in a while a big fluctuation. Yeah, but it's really hard to stay in the middle when you're used to the top and the bottom. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah, to me, healthy boundaries were a sign of lack of love.
I love that. Healthy boundaries are a sign of lack of love. We are definitely taught that in alienation, estrangement, erasure. I think that should be the new definition that healthy boundaries are the lack of love, right? So the kids need no boundaries, enmeshment. That knows, that means that I really love you. And early on, you said that your mom used to yell out the window every 30 minutes, and my ex-partner would come in my kids' rooms every 5 to 10 minutes to check on them, to look on them, and they thinking like she's coming to take care of them, but she's just coming to get a hit. She's just coming to get a little relief, a little like, oh my God, yes, I'm okay, I'm still alive, they're here. So yeah, that's all wonderful stuff.
You said it very well. So it was like you also maybe that I was like the drug to my mother, right? So she was addicted and I was her drug. So in in a way, I imagine myself in a bottle of alcohol. That was me, I guess, for my maybe mother or so.
100%. And just staying on this relationship topic because it's really fascinating. And for me, I was attracted to my first wife because she had similar characteristics to my mom. She needed someone to soothe her nervous system. So she would, for my analogy, she was kind of would feed on me to soothe her nervous system, and I'd feed on her to get my needs met by soothing her nervous system. And then I went out and looked for a partner that did the same thing, which was my first wife. So it's important in relationships that I own a part of everything that's happening with my children, with my family system, because I'm just reproducing and reincarnating the relationships over and over again. And we had spoken briefly on the intake interview about trauma bonding, and I'd like you to just to share with the audience what that means to you, and relate it to maybe one or two of your relationships, what they'll look like when we talk about trauma bonding.
I don't know. There's a lot of nice things I wrote here. If you read it, you might say, "Wow, why did you not bring this up?" And I just can't. There's just too much to talk about. I lost all these things I wrote. I wrote many things. Now I don't remember anything, Lawrence. But here, this organic conversation is more exciting, more fun.
It's
It's
more
more fun
fun,
to
it's more
talk.
organic. And this is what people want to see. They want to see the imperfection. Like you looking at the notes is a wonderful part of the show because it really speaks to how we're raised. And if we're just perfect, if we're just good enough, then we'll be lovable. Then we won't be defective. Then our parents will love us and accept us and everything will be okay. And we can never get perfect enough for them to love us because it has nothing to do with us. It's their work, but we want to be perfect to do their work for them. But it doesn't work. They gotta do something or not.
I think I learned in my upbringing that love can only be taken advantage of, exploited, and genuine love and innocence will eventually be exploited. So I just need to play along and surpass the dysfunctions of my parents, outrun them, outcompete them, hit them with their own weapon. I think that was the strategy I unconsciously took on. So, so I was traumatized heavily, and I could only again be involved in relationships that perpetuate that trauma bonding, that abusive patterns of relationships, that as if innocence and love cannot be remained intact, it has to be corrupted. Power corrupts, abuses, and the good things as if cannot be kept and worked on and improved or generated more. Love cannot be generated, as if one will abandon before or one will love less. So it's only comes down to who's gonna leave earlier, who's gonna love less, and exploit more. It's become this commodity maybe of relationships rather than a genuine bond for me.
Totally, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. And for anyone out there, like trauma bonding is just kind of like maybe it's an attachment disorder that you're bonding over, or like again, when a parent needs a child to soothe their nervous system, that parent has some kind of trauma. So now they're bonding with their child or someone else in their life in order to work with their trauma that they're not even aware that they're having. And then relationships just keep pouring out in all different directions that are dysfunctional and inherently not necessarily useful. And that's basically what trauma bonding is, and what we're talking about. Um, we were talking, and you shared a wonderful analogy about Jenga, which I got a huge kick out of, and it's related to the family system and life, and a couple of other things that you happen to mention. Are you willing to share your Jenga analogy with us again?
Sure, thanks for bringing it up. I also like that analogy. I felt like a good it could be a good metaphor analogy for the situation I've been going through. That I felt myself as the last building block at the bottom of a Jenga, where the hands of parents or all the capitalist hands are just trying to go to new heights, um, stealing from the blocks, in a way exploiting the system without being aware that if it's going to collapse, with the people at the bottom collapsing, the whole system will collapse. So I felt like at the strained by being pulled from opposite directions, like as if those hands, one of these two parents, were pulling me to their direction from opposite sides, as I was being the last building block at the bottom. So I was feeling like tearing apart. So I didn't know. And the thing is, as if this also made me feel maybe the collapse of my parents will be also my collapse, right? I'm in this
Mm.
collapse, annihilation altogether. I can't get out of this game. That it's gonna eventually collapse on me. That I feel I'm driving force of this whole skyscraping consumerist thing. Parents can keep up their perfect image. I will kind of take the burden of this, but eventually it will collapse on me. Was maybe the unfortunate takeaway also.
Yeah, no, no, that's a wonderful perspective. Like if, like a child in a family system at the bottom of the Jenga game, holding the weight of both parents, and both parents are tugging and trying to get different needs met, and the child is just feeling the weight and the incredible responsibility of the whole Jenga game that's sitting on top of them. And I think this is an interesting thing, and I'm going to ask you about it, like the omnipotence piece, right? Like this idea that I'm responsible for all these blocks that are piled on top of me as a child, whether a young child, a teenager, a young adult, an adult like you, like just feeling the weight of the family system on you, and the responsibility for that has just got to be completely overwhelming, and just incredibly challenging to process or navigate.
Yeah, maybe my unconscious desire was to keep up my parents' perfect image, because if that collapse, it's going to reveal that maybe I've been all orphan all along, that they were children themselves, and they were orphaned children themselves, creating another children. So we were all living in orphanage trying to parent each other. And I think I didn't want this kind of truth to be the truth to be revealed, because in that case, that means I've been an orphan for 35 years, living with step parents all this time.
I gotta tell you, man, like culturally, we're in different countries and stuff like that, and some of your analogies and languaging is so refreshing and beautiful, and what a wonderful idea. Like that we're orphaned, like we actually don't have parents when we're in some of this dysfunction and enmeshment and regulating different people's nervous systems. That we're all a bunch of children just running around trying to parent each other, and I think it's really an important thing to be clear about. In the family system, the kids are getting elevated to parent status over and over and over again in different situations where they're 2 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old. Like they get elevated because there is all the kids running around, and it's like a nut house. So I love that analogy. That really rings very true to me.
Yeah, and what hurts and saddens me the most is the very people I want to see me, hear me, and parent me expect me in the first place to see, hear, and parent them, and that just creates a bunch of kids, free for deathmatch and competition, envy going all around, in omnidirectional, and it put me in a double bind, Lawrence. Like, should I prioritize living for myself or for my parents? Because I couldn't find out how to do both. Otherwise, I was tearing apart.
Oh, wow, that's crazy making. Yeah, like how do I take care of myself, show up for my parents, where am I supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do? And just for any parents and grandparents out there, this is such a wonderful interview because we're really digging into someone that's done a lot of work and is looking some into some deeper layers of the psychology of the kids and their minds and how do I navigate this and how do I manage all these really complex things that are going on. And I love the work that you're doing. And I want to ask this question, like you said, like life got really challenging and dark and bleak, and just share with us a little bit what your recovery work looks like today, and what aspects of your recovery work do you feel early on are the most important for young adults, children, folks that are alienated or in a dysfunctional family system to start working on.
Okay. Yes, I'm. What I'm doing is, when my emotions are too heavy and pent up, accumulated, I want to go. I do vipassana meditation. I've been to once only. It's a 10-day silent retreat, with healthy food also. I find it really helpful. The power of silence, I feel that this is where the gods or higher powers voice is, because there's so much mind chattering. So when I go to meditate for 1 hour, focusing on my breathing and my body scanning, when I could finally calm my body down and calm my breathing down, there is sometimes answers that's generally not where I was looking for. That's coming from within to me. I don't know from where. That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. So vipassana meditation, any breathing and body scanning, I think could work. I do 12 steps program. I've been on ACA, CODA, and now PAA. I'm not uh, active, very active every day, but I do it as need be. And I have a sponsor. I had paused at the fourth step, which is always the point. That's because of my perfectionist approach. I postpone always. I want. I intend to finish it up someday soon. Other than that, for me, because I like music, also creating, songwriting, and I'm interested in creating movies or short movies too. Not movies yet, but short movies too. I'm enrolled at a psychology program now and at also film school. So I love watching movies. Um, there are almost movies in all topics today, right? And I feel that whatever stage I am at the time, I'm trying to watch that movie, because now I'm aware that in a lifetime there is only so much books and movies I can enjoy, and so much friends I can meet among 7 billion. So I accepted that. That was hard for me to accept. So I need to be picky about what I'm watching or reading. So I'm trying to choose that in alignment, attuned or in alignment with the recovery process I'm in. So 12-step meditation, silent retreats, movies, psychoanalysis for me, sessions if people can afford or they value it, psychotherapy and psychoanalysis for me. It's a very nice thing. I love it. Um, and journaling, and there is this um, artist two-way prayer programs or just two-way prayer programs. I think one can find it online easily. You just journal for 10 minutes and the others in the room give you feedback if you like. So you hear each other and you give feedback. You can also make friends. And God Squad too. God Squad, through these programs on 12 steps, I met some people uh, serendipitously, and we are in touch. So when I feel the need or urge or to wish or just for no reason, I just contact them And that kind of support network is so important, that for one to not feel isolated, be isolated, especially at the time of crisis.
Mm, mm. That's very cool. So I'm hearing meditation, I'm hearing therapy, I'm hearing 12-step work, and you mentioned CODA and some other stuff. And those are just different 12-step programs, very similar to Parental Alienation Anonymous, and they concentrate on a little bit different things. So that all sounds great, and the creativity and the music. And you mentioned in the end having community. I think that is a necessity because so much of the stuff is so isolating. So that is all wonderful. And we are getting near the end of the show, and it's just there's so much in there. I'm going to have to listen to this several times because there's so many different nuances that we touched on a little bit. And if anyone's out there and there's something that they want to be explored or to dig into a little bit, send us an email at familydisappeared@gmail.com. Ask me a question. If you have a question for Ceyhun, ask the question. I'll make sure he gets the email and gets to answer it. And maybe it'll influence some future shows if there's certain things we've been discussing. Again, because it's been just ridiculously rich today. So just to wrap up the show, like what do you want to say? Like what do you want to say to young adults that are in your same position, whether they're a little bit more advanced or they're several steps behind you? Like what's that thing that if you could communicate one thing with them, what would that be?
Actually, Lawrence, before I respond to your question, I like to say that I love this conversation with you. There's so much I like to still uh, talk to you about. And yeah, what I would like to tell them is that this is definitely a hard work. It needs both hard work and faith in a higher power, as everybody understands it. Um, to me, it's actually allowing space, room for the unknown. If we are only going by what we known in the past, well, that wasn't a good place, and the output of the past probably may not yield the answers we need today. So there is so much need for, I think, allowing new room and space of unknown, that because I don't know what I don't know, and there's so much of it, especially maybe for people with a hard, difficult past. So there's a lot of mourning that's awaiting, I think, um, and it's okay to be in the depressive mood, be depressed and mourn over the lost childhood, maybe the good enough parents, the time to spend with them, the fantasy and dreams we were holding on to in the past to survive. That's maybe won't mean anything anymore today or tomorrow. So most of our identity, most of the chunk of the identity as we knew it of ourselves may actually need to be left behind, including the dreams and fantasies we had. So we may start a completely different new life tomorrow. So we need to be ready for that unknown, to go embark on a journey. For me, the reason I was holding so tightly and firmly to my past and parents, and hopefully decreasingly so, was that uh, my take is it's harder to lose something one has never experienced, one has never had. So my take is that children with good enough parenting, whatever that may be defined, may find it easier to detach and start their life early on. But when there's so much longing for the times that's unspent in the past, I think that longing kind of haunts. Um, it's at least for me, it made me want to kind of, as if life owes me something. That sense of entitlement. I need reimbursement. I need like makeups of the past. So I couldn't kind of look towards future because there was still some business with the past that I was expecting from life. And but again, I may need to change and let go of expectations of that, and that's the recovery work.
Beautiful stuff, wonderful conversation. So many things left to discuss. I agree with you 100%, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Hopefully, at a later date on a different podcast with some other alienated or previously alienated children. I think that would make a really interesting panel, like digging into a couple of these nuances and hearing some different perspectives. So, Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
Oh, thank you, Lawrence. I would love that. And thank you for having me over. It's so nice to be here and sharing my experience. Thank you for the space.
Wow, what a great show! And I don't know why I say "wow" at the end of each show. I hope someone makes fun of me for that or does something with that. But anyway, wow, what a great show! And I don't know about your experience, but there were so many different nuances and so many different paths to go down, and so many wonderful ideas and concepts that Jaehoon shared that are really cool and refreshing and interesting, and we'll definitely re-engage and continue some of those conversations. And if there's anything that you want to hear more about or questions you have, family disappeared at gmail.com. You can ask me the question, you can ask Jayhun the question, and we'll get those answered for you. And remember that there's some great links in the show notes. There's a link to Parental Alienation Anonymous, which is a free 12-step support group. We spoke about 12-step support groups and community and how important that was in the conversation. There's also a link in the show notes to the Family Hope Project, which is an educational and advocacy platform. Please check that out because that is awesome. And what else is in the show notes? There's other good stuff in the show notes. Is the podcast crew. Let us know what you like on the show, feedback, anything like that, and like, share, do something. Let someone else know that there's some really great information. And I'm going to end the show with this. I wish I had some of this information early on, and my trajectory would have been so much shorter, and the pain less, and the access to resources so much easier. So share, like, do something, and don't do something too. So have a beautiful day, and I will see you around the neighborhood.